Through that many relationships don't fail because people stop caring. A lot of times they fail because people stop paying attention.
Well, it's not just about listening. It's also about learning what other people truly need and then responding to that.
Down to this, people don't feel valued because you say you care. They feel valued when you have an opportunity to show it by responding to their needs. Most people aren't blindsided. They're warned repeatedly and they fail to listen. People trust leaders who make them feel known.
If people don't feel heard, if they don't feel seen, it breaks down trust. When it all comes together, trust becomes unshakable.
You're listening to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast.
Here, law enforcement leaders gain practical tools to lead proactively in a reactive profession so they can communicate clearly, strengthen internal trust, and stay grounded in their call to serve.
I'm Mike McIntosh, a retired sheriff and current division chief with nearly 4 decades in law enforcement leadership.
And I'm Kathy McIntosh, a business and branding strategist and longtime law enforcement wife. I focus on the human side of leadership, communication, identity, and the internal dynamics that impact performance and trust across an organization.
Together, we combine real-world command experience with clear, actionable leadership conversations.
So you can lead with intention, build stronger teams, and elevate your call to service.
Well, welcome back to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. We're going to dive right in today. And, quite honestly, this podcast is going to stem from a very simple question that you asked me when we were in the car the other day, and it came from out of the blue.
I could totally see why you felt that way. It did, from your perspective, come out of the blue, but it turned into a great conversation. I had listened to a leadership training that challenged me with a very simple idea, and it had asked, do I really know what the people closest to me need from me? Not what I assume they need or think that should matter to them, but how they actually communicated and the things that they've told me that matter. Am I reacting to that? Am I responding to that?
And to me, that simple question was such a huge question. And it made me realize we're not just talking about a leadership principle here. As with so many aspects in leadership, it comes down to a life principle.
We sat down and had, as I said, a heartfelt conversation about whether or not we truly support one another's dreams and visions, but not just on the goal or career-oriented or task-oriented side of things. We also talked about, are we fulfilling each other's wants and needs? Or are we just assuming that we do? Especially, we've been married quite some time and we can get into a rut, a rhythm,
right,
and start to take things for granted. So I just asked you, am I supporting you the way that you hope that I will?
Right. And when you first asked me that, I really had to reflect. Well, first, my initial response was, are you kidding me? And I was really looking at it from a perspective of you are a wonderful supporter of everything that I do. And you're so involved in the things that I do. It kind of took me off guard because it made me think, am I reflecting to you that you are supporting me? And that reality started to kind of shine through that many relationships don't fail because people stop caring. A lot of times they fail because people really stop paying attention to one another.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not, as you already said, it's not just a marriage principle. It's not just a relationship principle. The same thing happens at work.
Yeah. And as I started to look at this and look at this principle, you start to realize that teams can lose trust in leaders when they feel unheard. And we've said that before, but it's so important to stop and really think about what that means and what unheard exhibits itself as.
Mm-hmm.
Spouses may lose connection when they feel dismissed. Friendships drift when their needs, the needs of the friendship, the reason why you're friends, if they start to be taken advantage of or they start to be unnoticed.
That's exactly why we decided to start talking about that conversation that we had together in this podcast episode, because our hope is that we will unpack some reasons why great leaders don't just hear people. It's not just about listening. It's also about learning what other people truly need and then responding to that, because it breaks down trust. It erodes trust when people feel unheard, as you said, unnoticed, taken for granted. And our influence can grow when people know that we take them seriously and we take their needs seriously.
Right. This doesn't just impact your team. It impacts your family, your marriage, your friendship, and truly every relationship you're involved in.
Yep, absolutely. So from a professional perspective, why is it that listening alone is not enough? It is drilled into us from the time that we're children. Listen to people, listen to what I say.
Mm-hmm.
You have 2 ears and only one mouth. You should be listening twice as much as you're talking. But
Right.
listening all by itself is just not enough. And why is that?
Well, first of all, I think we have to look at the fact that hearing words is passive, but understanding that requires effort. And many leaders or spouses listen, but a lot of times they fail to act. And what it boils down to is people don't feel valued because you say you care. They really feel valued when you have an opportunity to show it by responding to their needs. There's an action that's involved in that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to use a extremely oversimplified example, and you'll see how dramatic this is, but I think it will prove the point and hit it home. But let's say that there's a married couple, and they've been having some fights recently. And in each fight, the wife says to the husband, I just need you to take out the trash more often. Again, super simplified. And he hears her, he listens, but he never starts taking out the trash. And finally, months go by and she leaves. Well, we know, hopefully, nobody's leaving a spouse because of trash issues. But again, we're just simplifying this example. So
Right.
when she leaves, he's shocked and he says, I'm completely blindsided. But was he? Was he blindsided? She communicated her needs time and time again. He heard them. The breakdown came when he didn't respond. And he, may have thought, wow, that's so simple. She doesn't really mean that. I'm really tired when I get home from work. Whatever excuses come up. But he didn't respond to a need that she was communicating.
When we drill down deep into this, we realize that most people aren't blindsided. They're warned repeatedly and they fail to listen. They miss repeated signals. Quite honestly, we dismiss signals when they're in conflict with our own needs or our own self-image and even our own assumptions. And I can be very guilty of this one, especially when I first got into the workforce. I really had this assumption that everyone has the same values, that they are motivated by the same things. They want the same things. Their needs are the same. And what we come to realize is that we lead from our preferences instead of others' needs. We're caught up and we're busy, and that really starts to crowd our attentiveness. There's so many different distractions. Like we like to say, a lot of different rabbit trails that we can go down, and we become unattentive to what's really happening. And sometimes we think that intent matters more than the impact. So just the example that I've been guilty of is I may be present, physically present, but I'm not mentally present. I'm not mentally there. Yeah, I'm home with you, but am I with you? Are we, engaged in communication with one another, or am I just sitting there physically with you, but I'm scrolling on my phone and not really paying attention to what is going on or the conversation that we may be engaged in?
Mm-hmm. And that's a good example of when you're, I intend to be with you, and yet there's all these distractions in the way. And our intentions do not equal effective support. It doesn't matter what we intend to do. It matters what we really do.
Right.
And when you started talking about how, you assume that what you value, what you need is what everybody needs. If I need it, you need it.
Right.
If you don't need it, if I don't need it, you shouldn't need it. That's just kind of the mindset that we get into. And it really makes me think of the 5 love languages. And most people have heard of that. There's a great book about it. There's online assessments that you can take. But there's just these simple things that I receive love and I feel loved. And I'll just walk through these 5 really simply. I feel loved when I receive either words of affirmation or quality time or receiving gifts or acts of service or physical touch. Those are the 5 love languages. And what I have learned over a lot of years of just observing people and knowing that these love languages exist is that if I need words of affirmation, let's say that is my love language, and I feel most loved when I receive those, that's what I give to other people naturally because it's what I need, so it must be what you need also. But here I am smothering you with words of affirmation, and you're just going, could you just be quiet one time and give me a hug? Because your love language might be physical touch.
Right.
And so what we think we need, we think everybody else needs. I've got a really, really good friend who comes into town, not nearly enough, but when she comes, she always brings gifts. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, her love language is receiving gifts. And so she's giving gifts. So how am I responding? I'm saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But finally I was like, you should just give her a gift sometime. That's just really going to speak back to her that it matters. It's just such a good realization to know that her needs are not my needs.
Right.
My needs are not her needs. And it's powerful information to have.
It's such a great example of what we need to be doing as leaders. We need to be paying attention. We need to be understanding what is motivating each team member. We need to know what their career aspirations are, what their developmental needs are. We need to know what support they need from us. And it's reflected if we pay attention and or if we ask, right? It's again, it goes beyond just intent. We have to follow through with the act.
And why is that? Why is the action so powerful for building trust? Not only between 1 or 2 or 3 people, but for entire teams. Why is it so powerful?
That bond of being understood almost immediately creates this loyalty. There's this desire now to really want to link up with that person because finally somebody understands what it is that I'm trying to say or what my expectations are or what my needs are. And with that loyalty, you will see trust grow exponentially. People trust leaders who make them feel known. That trust is built when people know that you take them seriously.
That is absolutely true. I also think that people receive correction better when they already trust you. They know you care. They know that you're for them. You're not trying to just tear them apart arbitrarily. You're making a correction because you want what's better for them. And when people can trust your intent, it just levels up your leadership ability and your leadership status. And people are going to want to follow you more.
you know, that topic or that phrase, constructive criticism,
Mm-hmm.
that really kind of comes from that relationship that you've developed with them. You cannot give somebody constructive criticism if you don't know them, if you don't understand what their needs are, if you're not listening, if you're not paying attention. Sure, you can do it from a very wide, broad perspective, but what they really need, and like you said, I think what people really desire is they want to know how to grow, and the only way that you're going to be able to offer that to them is to know them.
Absolutely. And sometimes, like you already said, you just have to ask, what is it that you need from me? How can I best support you? And not just listen, not just hear it,
Right.
but take it to heart and do some things. So if there's an employee at work, let's say, what are some signs or signals that they might be sending that would alert a leader to think, that person's not feeling heard. They're not
Right.
feeling appreciated. They're not feeling, or they are feeling kind of invisible. What are some of the things that you might see in the workplace?
Yeah, and this goes back to that you have to be paying attention. You have to be listening. You have to be watching. You need to know what normal is for them. You need to know where it is that they want to go. And when you start to see things that are in conflict with that, it could be withdrawal. If you see somebody that's starting to withdraw that typically would not, when you start to see frustration or that repetition of frustration or that repetition of doing something that is kind of out of character for them, when you start to see a reduced effort, the one that is really important to start watching is that emotional distance. When they start to passively disengage, when they start to distance themselves, you need to step into that as quickly as you possibly can, because there's something that's going on there. There's something that's starting to break that trust or that unity that has been built, and you need to get on top of that.
Let me ask you something. When your teams talk about your leadership, what do you hope they say? Trust isn't automatic. Respect isn't inherited with rank. Both are built intentionally. Many sergeants and lieutenants are carrying more responsibility than they were ever formally prepared for. And many are wondering whether they're truly ready for the next step. Coaching creates space to slow down, reflect, and lead on purpose. We've seen leaders restore unity in divided teams. We've seen aspiring leaders step into promotions with steady confidence. If that's the kind of intentional growth that matters to you, go to leleaders.com and schedule a conversation. We'll meet you where you are, and we'll build a plan that fits your role and your goals.
Yeah, and I've seen that emotional distance and that disengagement look like shorter answers. Like maybe they would give you a couple of sentences to a question, and now they're just answering yes or no.
Yeah.
Or they stop making eye contact, or you kind of see them ducking around an opposite hallway because they don't want to bump into you, just kind of as you're traveling through an office. So sometimes it can be really small little cues. And I am absolutely equating most of this to marriage in this episode as well. But when you start to, you can tell when your spouse is upset with you.
Yeah.
You can tell.
Right.
You need to know your staff and your team members in the same degree of familiarity so that you can
Right.
start to pick up on something's wrong. And maybe they're not mad at you. Maybe they're mad at a different partner or somebody else on the team. But that just gives you awareness of what's going on when you pay attention to those cues and those signals. So once you start to see that happen, how is it that a leader can start to discover what they do need? How do you regroup, find out what they need, and then have something solid that you can respond to?
Yeah, that's the critical part of all of this, is to make sure that you do engage. Again, we get caught up in life. We get caught up in busyness and sometimes a lack of time, or even a situation as to, is now the best time to have those conversations. But it is so important that as quickly as we can, we step into that and we have that conversation. And it may be that we just ask them directly, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? What's going on? I see that this seems a little bit off. And that's when we start to, again, demonstrate through our actions that we really do care. It's not that we're trying to be nosy, but we really do care, so that we can provide any input or provide maybe what's needed. It could just be an explanation as to something that we may know that they don't understand. I see this a lot in the why. People want to know why. Why are we doing something? Why? And if we're not answering those questions, if we're not listening to them say why, and they can be doing it in a lot of different ways, that's when that teamwork can really start to go off the rails. So it's important to have that conversation, and it could be in the most impactful way is just to have that direct conversation. Sometimes all we need to do is maybe just observe the patterns and the frustrations, and that might tell us what's going on. But I still think it's important to follow up with that conversation. Hey, I saw that this was going on. I saw how that affected you. I just want to make sure that you know that I'm paying attention and I'm here for you if you need, if you need me.
Yeah, great way to make somebody feel seen.
That's the action part that we're talking about. Not just that we're hearing them, not just that we're listening, but we're following up. We're showing that we care with that action. And one of the things that I also, there was that leadership book that came out quite some time ago, decades ago, but it was really that management by walking around, conducting those regular check-ins, having those conversations. You can't sit in your office and get to know your people inside your office if you're just sitting there. You have to get out, whether it's getting out of your office, getting out of your car, arriving on one of those scenes, and observing, listening, watching. It's so important to building that trust there.
Absolutely. And that stops in its tracks the habit of making assumptions, which is so unhealthy.
Yeah.
Having an attitude of, well, I thought you knew, is incredibly dangerous.
Right.
And when we make assumptions that people know what we know, they need what we need, it starts to create unmet expectations. And unmet expectations is the foundational definition of stress.
Right.
Familiarity starts to breed false confidence. We just feel like we know each other so well, we don't need to talk about these things anymore. And that's just something that breaks down at the finest levels and just starts to tear relationships and teams alike completely apart.
It's one of those things that I think happens organically if you're not paying attention. We talk about this all the time on our podcast. You have to be intentional. You have to have those follow-throughs and that follow-up.
So How do you do that? How does a leader start to respond once needs are known?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that leaders need to understand is that we need to adjust our leadership style to match our team members. Every one of our team members are different. There's different things going on in their lives. They're at different levels of experience. They have different goals, different aspirations, different education levels, different knowledge level of the team that they're on. And that means that we as the leader need to match our individual team members with what they need from a leadership perspective. And that is so foreign, I think, to a lot of leaders when they first get into those leadership roles. They are so used to kind of leading one way. They know how they lead themselves, and maybe, as an FTO or something, they would lead the trainees. But when you get into that realm of leadership, you're going to have to adjust your style dependent upon the situation. And there's the term situational leadership that is out there that I think it's so important for us to remember. And then we've got to follow through consistently. And that will demonstrate that as we walk through different conflicts or different obstacles, the leader is going to be adjusting as appropriately, but is also going to be following through. And then there's that clarification of expectations. And again, that goes back to the leadership style and the fact that every team member's different. When we clarify expectations, we're not the recipient of that. And we have to remember that. We understand the expectations because they're our expectations, but we've got different team members that are going to perceive those expectations differently. So we have to make sure that we're clarifying those and that each team member is getting what the desired response so that those expectations are clear.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've just got to make sure that we are committed to communicate.
So many things are firing in my head right now. When you talk about situational leadership and adjusting your leadership style to meet your team, I can remember times when you literally were saying, like, I am butting heads with people, old school cops who were leaders above you, who are like, nope, when you're the leader, it's your way or the highway. The employee has to be the one who adjusts their mindset. The leader stands firm. And you would say, no, that's not my leadership style. So sometimes there's some pushback on things like that, but I think your points are well taken. And the clarification of communication and the way things are in your own mind versus how they're said or shared or how they get through the pipelines. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And as somebody who's a writer and a communicator, there are times when I just need an outside set of eyes on something I've written. Like, I understand it so well. Is it coming across the way I want it to?
Right.
And it's just nice to have that feedback, somebody else to step in and say, you missed the mark here. You forgot to say, or I don't understand, or you just need to give people the freedom to ask questions so that clarification can truly, truly happen.
Yeah. So important.
Exactly. So let's move down to the finer points and talk about what listeners can do, leaders who are in the field. What can you do this week to start to hit this stuff home and to make sure that you're not just listening, you're also taking things to heart. You're starting to respond to what people need in the moment.
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm hoping that that this is spurring something in our
mhm.
listeners, much like it did me when you kind of hit me out of the clear blue with that question. And it's not because we've never had that conversation before.
Mhm.
It was just, it brought that clarity that we need to be having these conversations more
Mhm.
so that we're on the same page, because it's very, very important. And if we need to be doing that at home, we also need to be doing that with all of our other relationships. So one of the things that, when we do a takeaway, or what's a challenge, my challenge would be, who is that person in your sphere, whether it's a personal relationship or whether it's a professional relationship, but who is that person that it's time to do a check-in. Maybe, when we were going through some of those indicators, somebody's face came to mind, and that's the person that you need to go out and start to have that conversation, and just make sure that you get that relationship kind of back on track and headed in the right direction. Make sure that you're fulfilling the role that you want to fulfill in that relationship, whether it's you're the leader of a team, whether it's a friendship, what is your role, and are you fulfilling that? Are you listening to the other person that's involved in that relationship, and making sure that they're not drifting, that they're not headed in a different direction because of something that you've done.
Mm-hmm. And people might be wondering, like, well, how do I even broach the topic? How do I ask that question? So a couple of ways to think about this, or you can just say, what do you need from me right now that maybe I don't understand, or that I'm missing the mark on? Or another way to ask the question is there anything that's important to you that you feel I haven't been taking seriously enough right now?
Yeah, that is such a great question.
And the hard part is then that you don't defend yourself. You don't try to explain or justify. You listen, you take it to heart, and then you respond. Because you're going to discover that the people who are closest to you have been telling you what they need for a long time. Chances are very good, either verbally or in attitude or body language. They've been communicating it in some way, and you haven't slowed down enough to hear it.
That's such a great tip for us to make sure that we're intentional about, right? I just, in closing, want to say that great leadership isn't just about the vision or the strategy or the decision making. I know, incredibly important. We've got to have that as leaders, but we also have to understand that what we're leading are people, and if we're not understanding people well enough to serve them effectively, then we're failing as a leader.
And we're not really asking whether or not you're paying attention. We're asking whether you're taking it seriously.
Yeah.
If people don't feel heard, if they don't feel seen, it breaks down trust.
Right. Yeah. And we're also saying that this works at home and in the workplace.
And when it all comes together, trust becomes unshakable. And that's one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
We really want that unshakable trust.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm recording.
If today's episode added value, don't let it end here.
Share it with someone on your command staff or leadership team, because strong leadership isn't built in isolation.
And if you're ready to develop or become proactive leaders inside your organization,
leaders who communicate clearly and strengthen internal trust,
then visit leleaders.com to learn more about our coaching programs, workshops, and keynotes.
And if the podcast has been helpful, we'd appreciate your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Until next time, lead with clarity, lead with conviction, and elevate your call to service.